Trek Profiles Podcast, episode 41, recorded October 2020. This is the Trek Profiles Podcast, where each episode we sit down with a Star Trek fan, we hear their story, and we try to learn why they love Star Trek. I'm John, your intrepid host of this whole enterprise, and I welcome you to this, the Trek Profiles Podcast, episode 41. If you wish to get in touch with us, you can reach us at feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter @TrekProfiles. Warning! As we record this, my people, we have reached the end of Season 1 of Star Trek Lower Decks, so all previous Trek content up to and including that point is fair game and may be discussed during this episode. You have been warned, human. As always, my trusty sidekick and co-host is the mostly methodical, sometimes mercurial yet never maudlin M5 Multitronic unit. Greet the listeners, M5.
The M5 is available.
All right, M5, let's do the news.
News posted.
The Trek Profiles Podcast is an independent show, and if you'd like to support us, the best way to do that is to subscribe via your preferred podcasting platform. There are some lightly edited outtakes and bonus material at the end of this episode. They will come after the ending audio cards. Enjoy them, or not, as you choose. Let's do the Kobayashi Maru feedback from episode 39 with Scott Hardy. What's it made out of? Duranium or terminium? Scott picked duranium, and all of you did as well in the Twitter poll by an astonishing 94 to 6%. Time to be a tourist. Do you want to visit the Wall of Heroes on Andoria or the Vulcan Science Academy? Scott picked the Wall of Heroes, but the Twitter tweeps did not. They had selected a tour of the Vulcan Science Academy by 63 to 37%. Next question, hang out in Quarks or hang out in 10 Forward? Scott picked Quarks, and on Twitter, Guinan edged out a narrow victory of 52 to 48%. Next question, you are on the Enterprise D and there is a saucer separation. Do I find you in the saucer or in the drive section? Both Scott and the Twitter voters agreed on the saucer section by 52 to 48%. And finally, you are a new Starfleet engineer. Choose your first assignment. Impulse engine operations or transporter repair. Impulse drives were the choice of both my guest and the Twitter poll voters by 56 to 44%. As always, check my Twitter after each episode drops and you can have your say on this episode's questions. A little bit of listener feedback. Right now, as I am working on finishing up this episode, I've been hanging out in the vendor's room for Virtual TrekCon, and it was a thrill to meet some of you who stopped by to talk Trek with me. I appreciate y'all so much. And for those of you who weren't able to visit with me at Virtual Trek, you can always email me, you can tweet at me, or get me on the book face. Your feedback makes this all worthwhile. It truly does, and I appreciate it so much. Well, I think that's going to do it for the messages and communiques. Let's move on. M5, run the intelligence profile for this week's guest, and let's start the show.
M5 will comply.
Her favorite character is Philippa Georgiou, but she also loves Dr. McCoy, Will Riker, and of course Ensign Tilly, but the Betazoids also hold a special place in her heart. Her favorite ship is the USS Discovery, and she's currently watching pretty much all the Star Trek at once. She's from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, Earth, in Sector 001. It's Salwa Noor. Welcome, Salwa, and thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Salwa, are you a Star Trek fan?
Yes.
Now, this is going to be a surprise question, or a surprise answer, I think, to many of my normal listeners. How long have you been a Star Trek fan?
2 months.
So,
2 months.
For the listeners, I think I should explain how I found you, which is that I was online in a Star Trek forum, and I saw this post by a person I did not know who basically said, I just discovered Star Trek and it's amazing and I'm watching it all at once. And I said, well, I have to talk to this person. So I sent you a message and we arranged to do the podcast. So I am super excited to have you on the show. Now, You look to me to be a relatively younger person. If I can be indelicate, would you tell me at least what generation you might be in?
I was born in the 80s.
Okay, so you grew up when Star Trek already existed, right?
Yes.
And this was in Malaysia?
This was in Malaysia, yeah. So my childhood was in the 90s, right? And I remember watching Star Trek on TV at night with my family. But at that time, because I was a kid, I haven't learned, well, I have learned English in school, but my English was not so good. So I remember watching it, but not understanding anything. So I have that memory of Star Trek. So technically, it's few months back wasn't my first time watching it, but I guess it doesn't count because I don't understand anything from what I watched when I was a kid.
Right. So you just knew that it existed.
Yeah.
You knew that your family was watching it. I think you, in one of your emails to me, you said your brothers watched it, but you had no inkling of what it was besides the fact that you just watched it on TV.
Yeah. So,
that's amazing.
So I'm guessing that is probably the next generation. I don't know.
Okay, yeah. I mean, you
probably.
wouldn't. Who would remember, right?
Yeah.
Who would remember? It's if you can't understand it, who would even know, right? So, I want to then go through maybe your teen years and sort of in your early 20s, I would imagine. Was there people around? Were there people around you who watched Star Trek, or your brothers or other family members who even talked to you about it? I mean, did you have any interaction at all with Star Trek as an entertainment until just a few months ago? Like, if anything in there happened, tell me about it.
No. Most of my friends or family, I think they're more of a Star Wars fan rather than Star Trek. Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I know the general cultural references, like live long and prosper and all that, but that's it. That's it, really. So I have no one to discuss about Star Trek or anything like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, then take me back to just a few months ago. In one of the emails you sent me, we talked about the fact that it was a Netflix suggestion, and Netflix suggested Star Trek: The Original Series to you.
Yeah.
So explain to me why you decided to watch Star Trek. And what was going through your head when you put on that first episode? I mean, was it just sort of and it's okay if it was just like, I just really didn't think about it. I just said Netflix suggested it, I'll watch it. Or did you think about it? Or did you just click and go? Just what happened?
Okay, so I just gave birth 3 months back. So
congratulations.
Thank you. So I have time where I'm in my maternity leave, right? So I'm spending time with the baby. So while you're nursing, which can be like up to 1 hour, you're really just sitting there. So I have my iPad in front of me, and I have Netflix on, and so Netflix will sometimes suggest things to you, right? So they suggested Star Trek, and I thought, I've never watched Star Trek, and I know it's a big thing, but I know nothing about it, and let's just watch it. Just, because there are other shows that they suggest, and I watch it for like one episode and okay, not watching it anymore. So let's do that with Star Trek. So the first one that I watched was the original series, and the first episode is The Cage, which is
now The Cage, the original one with Captain Pike and all of that.
Yes, exactly. So it was Captain Pike. So I was like, okay, it's not bad. It's not bad. You can see for sure that it's in a studio. It's not outside. Yeah. And then I watched the second episode because I'm intrigued by this time. So I watched the second episode, and hey, it's a different captain now. It's Captain Kirk. Where did Captain Pike go? So because I have no idea.
None of that is explained, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
None of that is explained in the original sort of timeline, right? It's just they went and they got a new captain and made some changes.
Yeah, exactly. So it was much later when I was reading in Reddit that I knew, okay, so that was supposed to be something different, and it was something different. They rejected the Captain Pike part, and then they go on with Captain Kirk. So, okay, all right. So that's how it started.
So let's stay with that for just a second. What were the things that were most interesting to you in The Cage that made you want to keep watching?
In a way, it reminded me of the Planet of the Apes.
Okay.
Yeah. There were a bunch of the original Planet of the Apes. I think it was also back in the 60s. Yeah. So when Captain Pike was caught by the aliens and he was in the cage, so that kind of reminded me of the Planet of the Apes, where he was also caught in a cage with another human. I don't know whether you know the Planet of the Apes series.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So I really enjoyed the Planet of the Apes. So I thought, okay, this is something quite similar to that. So I find that interesting. And yeah, so I thought, okay, I'll just continue watching and see how it goes.
Oh, that's great. Well, I always have to say, whenever the reason I got a little excited is because my friend William Conlon, he actually made a documentary about Planet of the Apes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he actually made a documentary about it. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes page up at TrekProfiles. So if people have an interest, I would highly recommend they go check out my friend William's documentary on Planet of the Apes. It's really incredible and a real labor of love on William's part. He spent years on it, and it was an incredible project. So anytime anybody talks about Planet of the Apes, I get excited for him, and I have to talk about that. So, okay, great. So then you started watching the next episode, and I believe, if I remember right, the next episode that it's going to show you is probably the one with the salt sucker.
Yeah, the mantra.
Yeah, with the alien with the suction cups, right? And you get the whole new captain.
Horrible. I mean, the alien was horrible.
Yep.
So yeah,
absolutely.
And by that time, I thought, okay, I'll just watch another episode, and then I watch another episode, and then I watch another episode, and before you know it, I'm like 5 episodes in.
and you just kept watching the original series, season 1.
Yes, at that time, yeah. And then I think after a few days, Netflix started suggesting to me the next generation. So I thought, okay, let me see how different it is, because I know the next generation is much later than the 60s version, right? So I watched the next generation while watching the TOS. And after that, I started watching Discovery. And after that, I started watching Enterprise.
But when you say after that, you don't mean that you watched all of it and then the next thing. You were watching it all at the same time.
Yes, in parallel, at the same time. Yeah. So I'm only done with the original series, all the entire season. I'm still I'm in season 4 now for the next generation. I'm in season 2 halfway for Discovery, and I'm also in season 2 for Enterprise. So
and you haven't watched Voyager or Discovery, Voyager or Deep Space Nine yet?
No, not yet, because that is supposed to be much later in the timeline, right?
It doesn't matter.
Okay.
I realize there's probably some people who disagree with me on this, but I'm very much of the opinion that you can really start anywhere with Star Trek.
Okay.
Now, I will say that some of them are more serialized. Like I think Deep Space Nine is the most serialized, but not as serialized as people want to pretend it is. But that's the one where it has like a more of a story that goes throughout the whole thing. Like the original Star Trek wasn't like that at all.
No.
You know, the originals, each episode was completely reset. Voyager is sort of a little bit of a story, but it's not to the level that Deep Space Nine is. So you can watch Deep Space Nine as your very first Star Trek. You don't have to have watched any of the other ones.
Okay.
But you do want to watch it straight through. You don't want to skip around.
Okay. All right.
Whereas if you're watching Next Generation or original series, you could actually skip around. It actually doesn't really matter, because there's not a set story, So you've watched all 3 seasons of the original series, and that's it for the whole show, for a whole show.
Yeah. So the only show that I have completely finished is the original series.
Okay. Did you watch any of the movies?
No, I don't. I haven't, because I don't know how to access to those.
Oh, okay. I don't know if they're on. I don't know about the international distribution. I will tell you right now, I don't know how all that works. But there are a whole series of movies based on the original, with the original series cast.
Yeah. So
yeah.
they're not on Netflix, so I'm not sure how I'm going to find them now.
Yeah, they're out there on some service I'm sure you have access to, but I couldn't advise you in Malaysia which ones those would be.
Yeah. So, but if I could, I would, because I don't know, when I read about it, it seemed so interesting. So
yeah, they definitely are worth it. So my question though for you, Salwa, is you're sitting down to watch some Star Trek, right? You have a moment where you're going to sit down and you're nursing, so you have an hour. How are you deciding which of the shows you're currently watching are you going to watch? How are you deciding between Enterprise, Discovery, TNG?
I don't know. It just depends on my mood for that day. So if I feel like it, so I just press on TNG. Yeah, there's no particular reason why. I will just press any of it. Yeah, it's random.
Okay, and are you going to continue just like going through them all at the same time and just go from there, or do you think you'll kind of settle into one and finish it, or are you just going to do whatever the heart strikes you? Okay,
so for example, today I'm going to watch Enterprise. So I'll probably watch 2-3 episodes today. And then the next day, then I'll probably watch Discovery. And then I'll just watch 2-3 episodes. And then the next day and the next day, like that.
So as a new fan, I find this really interesting that you're watching all the different series like this. No, which is great. I'm very much a believer in you can consume Star Trek in any order. You know, there's some shows I'm very much not of that opinion, but Star Trek for sure, I'm of that opinion. When you're watching, say, TNG, what do you like best about TNG as opposed to TOS or Enterprise?
TNG. I love The Next Generation because of Captain Picard. Because I think what is really, really nice about The Next Generation is the camaraderie between the crew member, how the entire crew member, they're always helping each other, they're always working together, and they're working together really, really well, which was why one of my favorite episodes is the Arsenal of Freedom, because that's one of the episodes where you can really see everybody working together very, very well. And can I talk about the episode? Can I talk?
We'll get deeper. We'll get deeper into the episode. Yeah. So we'll come back and talk about the Arsenal of Freedom more deeply. Yeah. But you like the idea that they all very much work together as a team.
Yes, they're a team, and they're also friends, and they really care for each other, and they work very well together. So I love that, because for Enterprise, for example, you have the team members, they were nice to each other, but for example, for T'Pol, because she's a Vulcan, she's a bit isolated from the team. For the original series, you have Dr. McCoy always bantering with Spock, which is also why I love Dr. McCoy.
Yeah. Right, I'm going to ask you about that one in a minute. Yes, so let's continue on with TNG for now.
But the Next Generation is for me is the nicest, because it's like the team that works the most effectively, efficient, and everybody's nice to each other and supportive of each other. So it's and Captain Jean-Luc Picard, he's like a father figure and also a captain. So that's perfect.
So that's great. So then tell me about TOS and what impressed you the most about the original series.
Okay, so when I'm watching TOS, I try to imagine that what if I'm back in the 60s? So there were some parts of the shows that, I mean, if you're looking at it now, you go like, oh my God, the screen. It's so old fashioned, right? But imagine if I'm back in the 60s, this will be so cool, so futuristic, like the communicator. Now it's nothing, it's just like a phone. Yeah, but back then it would be something really cool that you can, open up a communicator and talk to people. So I tried to imagine myself like being in the 60s, and I feel like, wow. When you see the scenes and all that, and I try to imagine that I'm back in the 60s and watching this, like I'm one of those people. So yeah, it's interesting in that way. And I guess back then, if you're in the 60s, when you see different kind of aliens, you would probably be, wowed and, oh, that's awesome, this kind of alien, that kind of alien. Yeah. So yeah.
And you mentioned a little bit earlier that Dr. McCoy is one of your favorites. So tell me about Dr. McCoy and what about him appealed to you?
I guess it's because most people will say that their favorite would be Captain Kirk or Spock. And I can understand why, because Captain Kirk is brave and charismatic, and Spock is so brilliant and smart and logical. I think Dr. McCoy is the more human character. Yeah, like all of us could be. We could all be like behaving like Dr. McCoy, like in a situation he would be like, Jim, you can't do this. I'm like him, like, yeah, you can't do that. So I think I agree a lot with Dr. McCoy in terms of how he sees things and all that. So Spock is supposed to be the logical person, and I think Dr. McCoy is supposed to be the more feeling kind of person. So I think that's why I'm aligned more with Dr. McCoy rather than Spock or Captain Kirk.
I think that's great. Now let's talk about Enterprise. So as you watch Enterprise, what about that show appeals to you, and how would you contrast it against the other ones that you've been watching?
Enterprise is okay. I'm not sure why, but I feel like Enterprise has a homey feeling to it. Maybe because it's the first. It's supposed to be the first one in the entire timeline, right?
Yeah.
Right. So that's when they actually first leave Earth and go out to space. So in a way, you feel some sort of connection, because we are. In the real world, we are not there yet, but you can see, like SpaceX and all that, right? So you feel that excitement of, okay, they're finally leaving Earth and exploring space and all that. So and they still have food. There is not all synthesized. They still have a chef on board, so there is still some connection with the real world and the futuristic world in Enterprise. So yeah, and there's a dog on board. Yeah, so it feels a little bit more, I don't know, it feels a bit homey to me compared to the others. It's futuristic, but not fully futuristic like TNG. Yeah,
it's a little bit more accessible to sort of the modern person, right? Yeah. Like the 21st century. Like you can sort of see yourself more easily living in that world. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Like the technology is something a little bit more closer.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. One of the things I've always said about TNG is that it seems a little too cozy sometimes. Like space doesn't seem as dangerous as I think it could be. So yeah, very fair. Now, Discovery is probably the most different from any of the other series. So tell me, what about Discovery appeals to you in particular?
I really like Discovery. I guess for my generation, this Discovery is the one that really represents the generation. In terms of the technology, where you have the translucent screen and all that, that is pretty much of what we are having right now. I understand that in terms of the timeline, it's not really logical because it's supposed to be based before the original series. But the technology is something that we would easily see in the real world, I guess. Yeah, and most of the actors are around my age. So you really feel immerse in it. Yeah. And the look and feel, because it's all shiny and
it's very modern.
Yeah, very modern looking. So yeah, I really really like it, Discovery. And
that's fantastic.
And compared to Enterprise, because for Enterprise, the intro song is totally different.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was like, why? Why is the song different? It's Star Trek. So when I watch Discovery, it still have that sound, right? Ding ding ding. So yeah, I'm watching Star Trek.
So do you like the song?
Yes, I love the song. When I watch the J.J. Abrams movies, so the J.J. Abrams movies, they are based on the original series. So
correct.
So I watched those movies before, but I don't really appreciate it. And after watching the original series, I rewatched those movies again, and I'm like, oh, Captain Kirk. Like it's like you're finally recognizing the characters. And then towards the end of the movie, when they play the score, the Star Trek score,
yes.
you really appreciate it. Hey, this is the sound that I love from TOS. Yeah. So
when did you watch that 2009 movie? The 2009 Star Trek film. Was that before this Netflix thing just a couple months ago?
Yes, before. But
so you had seen Star Trek before Netflix?
The movies, yeah.
The 2009 movies.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So yeah, you'd seen those, but you didn't.
Well.
Right, but it sounds like you didn't appreciate them until you saw TOS.
Because it's just a movie, like when you're watching Transformers or whatever, you just watch it. I guess that's why, like, for example, Transformers is also based on cartoon back in the 90s. But I never watched those cartoons. So when I watch Transformers, I don't really feel anything.
Right.
Yeah, so maybe that's why when I watch Star Trek, the movies, and okay, it's a nice movie. And then when I watch this TV show and then I rewatch those movies, it's so much more, it's so much better when I watch it the second time around. Yeah, I really, really appreciate the characters, and like when the character in the movie were saying, "All I have is my bones." So it's like, okay, maybe that's why he's called Bones. So
very good, very good. What percentage of the way do you think you are through all the Star Trek? There's about almost 800 hours of Star Trek out there right now.
I don't know, maybe 20%.
Wow. Okay, so you got a long way to go.
A long way to go, because
How long do you think it's going to take you?
Maybe next year. I don't know, because I can't watch all the episodes. I mean, maybe in the day, the most I can watch is 5-6 episodes. Yeah, because I'm taking care of a child. So yeah, I would probably be taking a long time to finish because I intend to finish, Deep Space Nine and Voyager, the whole thing.
And then you'll have your completest merit badge and you'll be all set.
Yes.
You'll be right there with the rest of the fans.
Yeah, it's just that for the movies, I'm not sure how I can watch those, the Star Trek movies. Yeah,
I'm not sure either. Maybe someone out there on Twitter can tell us. I don't know. But if they let me know, I'll pass along the information to you.
Okay.
But I certainly couldn't tell you in Kuala Lumpur how to do it. So you're watching it by yourself? Are any of your other family members now and watching along with you, or like your brothers? Are they excited that you're watching it now because you used to watch it with them as a kid?
I don't know. I haven't talked with my brothers about it, but yeah. Well, when I'm watching it, sometimes my boy, he's about 8. He will also look at it sometimes. So he will also watch it sometimes. So. I think it intrigues him as well because it's space, so everybody likes that. Yeah, but otherwise, no, no.
All right, no, it's totally fine, totally fine. Have you felt compelled to buy anything Star Trek related?
We'll see. I don't know yet because I don't know what is being sold here. I mean, most of the stuff will be sold from the US, and they'll be really expensive. if I want to buy it. Yeah. So I'm not sure. I haven't found any local community of Star Trek fans. I'm sure there is. So
I'm sure.
Yeah, so I just need to find the local Malaysian community of fans, and then maybe I can see what they have.
All right. Well, if there's any Malaysian Star Trek fans out there who are listening to this, let me know and I'll pass along the information.
Most likely it'll be like a pin because it's something that I can pin on my scarf.
Oh yeah, no, it'd be great. Yeah, of course. There's well-known companies out there, QMX and Fansets, that make beautiful Star Trek pins.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can buy like all your favorite characters and all that kind of stuff, and they're very reasonably priced. But I don't know what it would be to ship it to Malaysia, so that I couldn't tell you.
It would be nice if I could get like the badge, like the, what do you call it, the symbol.
Yeah, the Delta.
Yeah,
it's called the Delta.
Oh, okay. So and then I could like Captain Riker, Captain Picard.
No,
okay.
People, the people who are listening to this can't see it, but you're actually tapping your chest like in TNG. You're like, activating the communicator, which I think is great. It's we all want to do that, right? Hit the communicator and say, "Beam us out of here." All right. Well, I think it's time to talk about some episodes. What do you say?
Okay.
All right. Well, Salwa, one of the first ones that you put on the list for us to talk about is a Discovery episode, Vaulting Ambition, Season 1, Episode 12. This is the one where Burnham takes Lorca to meet the evil Mirror Universe Giorgio. All right, for those who don't remember. And also, a little trivia note, this is actually the shortest full episode of Star Trek. It's only 38 minutes, which is really, really short. And I remembered when it first came out and I was watching it, I was like, the episode can't be over. And sure enough, it was. Oh. What about this episode was special to you, Salwa?
What I really like particularly about this episode, because this is the episode where the twist is revealed, which is that Lorca is not who you think he is. So there was a part of the episode when Captain Giorgio was hiding her eyes from the sun. And she said, okay, so for those people in the Terran Empire, they have sensitive eyes. And then only Michael realized, Lorca also have sensitive eyes. Yeah. So I really like this episode because that's when everything falls into place. And that's when you realize, oh my God. Okay. Yeah. And also, this is the episode where she met with Captain Giorgio again, although it's an evolved version of Captain Giorgio, because she lost Captain Giorgio back then, a few episodes before, and you can feel how guilty she feels about she takes it, she blames herself for it, and at the same time she missed Captain Giorgio because that's like a mother figure to her. And and this universe, she met her again, and that is. I mean, I think I can relate to that because, I've lost my father. So if you meet somebody like that, of course you go like, the feeling will be emotional. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be very deep, very deep.
Yeah.
Right. And I imagine it's somewhat confusing because you have to realize this mirror universe person is wholly evil.
Yeah.
But they look just like that person. Exactly. And in a way they are. It's very strange.
Yeah, that's why. So this is the favorite episode for me.
Oh, which is great. Now, one of the things you put in your email to me is that you were talking about you had such a sense of pride and identification with Giorgio because the character is Malaysian.
So for those who don't know, Michelle Yeoh is Malaysian. So I guess she's our most successful actor because she's the one that has been to Hong Kong and to Hollywood. Yeah, so she has played a lot of characters in Hollywood as well, but she's in Star Trek. So that makes us really, really excited. Yeah. So
how wonderful.
So it's like you have a representation in Star Trek. Yeah. And
which is glorious.
Yeah, and also I don't know whether you realize, but there were 2 times that there were cities in Malaysia that was mentioned. One is when when Michael was asking Captain Giorgio, where were you from? And she said, Pulau Langkawi. And another is actually in Enterprise, when they were calling Malcolm Reed's parents, and they were and they were in Malaysia, in Kota Baru. So these are our local towns. So we were like, oh, because in Hollywood, I mean, Malaysia is rarely mentioned, right? It's like Malaysia is a very small country in Southeast Asia. I mean, usually people know Thailand and Singapore, but not Malaysia really. So it makes me.
And Malaysia is many times the size of Singapore, right?
Yeah.
but people know that, right?
Yeah. So actually, historically, Singapore was part of Malaysia.
So how far away are those towns from where you are in Kuala Lumpur?
They're pretty near. Pulau Langkawi is maybe less than an hour by flight. And Kota Baru, same, about 30 minutes by flight. If you drive to Kota Baru, it will take you about 10 hours.
Oh, goodness.
because you have to pass through the mountain, not mountains, like there's a lot of hills. So you have the highway is not like really straight. Yeah, so it will take you some time.
Oh, that's amazing. But have you been to either of these places?
Yes, I've been to both places, yeah.
Oh, so that must have been like a double pleasant surprise for you.
Yeah. And both places are really beautiful. So they've chosen a good cities, yeah.
Oh, that's wonderful. So they really knew what they were doing when they picked those two places, which is great.
Yeah, I was wondering maybe Michelle Yeoh was like she had an input about it, maybe.
Now I didn't look this up, but is she actually from one of those places, or is she from somewhere else?
No, she's from a different city. She's not.
Oh, okay.
But she's still from Malaysia, so.
Right, but she would know. She would have been able to say.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about a TNG episode. Now, this one, you brought it up before, and I got to say, it's never come up on the show before, which I think is great that you selected it. The Arsenal of Freedom, Season 1, Episode 21. The Enterprise is searching for the USS Drake, and they end up having this visit to this planet, which is basically the planet of an arms dealer. And there are some shenanigans with Picard and Crusher falling down in a cave, and Crusher's hurt. And meanwhile, Riker and everybody is trying to avoid these horrible drones. It's really quite something. So what about this episode was special to you?
I think what I like about this episode is because compared to all the other episodes, these are the episodes where the roles are not as how do you say, as usual as you see it. For example, for all the other episodes, Captain Picard is in charge. But in this case, he's stuck in the cave. Dr. Crusher is the one that's always helping people. But in this episode, she's the one that's hurt. And also there was a part where Geordi was in charge. He separated.
Yes.
Yeah? And he was trying to catch the ship that was targeting them.
Yes.
Yeah. So he did this maneuver that was like really cool, where they had to go through the atmosphere and actually get burned up, and then they can see the other ship and hit it. So I really like the part where you can see Geordi being in charge. Like he's the captain. So because all the other episodes you see Captain Picard or sometimes Riker becoming the captain, but in this case it's Geordi. So I like that change of roles. Like when the captain is down and someone else is in charge. Yeah. So I think that's why I really like this one.
One of the things I always notice, because of the work that I do for my full-time job, is I always notice the leadership moments in these episodes. And one of the things I saw in this particular one was Engineer Logan, who was such a jerk. Such a jerk. And Geordi is having none of it.
Exactly.
He's not having any of it. Yeah. And he handles them really well,
Yeah, exactly. So I think I like it when in that particular episode, the people who are like not supposed to be the main characters are rising up and taking up the main character role. So I enjoy that.
Yeah, I also like that he got advice from Troy, and he gives this great little pep talk.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, it's just it's glorious. It really is.
And I thought this is one of the reasons. I mean, I love Counselor Troy, and in this episode, she is really, really helpful. So I really enjoy that. And I guess if you want to talk about, for example, the technology, the people of Minos were like destroyed by their own technology, and that is something also that I guess we are experiencing in a way in the real world, where we are getting destroyed by our own technology. So yeah, it's ahead of its time, I guess. You can say that.
No, it's a very powerful lesson. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So yeah, this is why I mean, because I haven't finished the entire TNG yet. So, but this so far is like one of the best for me.
All right, great. I'm all for it. So. Another one on the list. Now, this one is a very popular episode that comes up quite a bit. Best of Both Worlds, Season 3, Episode 26, and Season 4, Episode 1, where Picard is assimilated by the Borg, and we have that cliffhanger. Now, you are someone, and I'm very interested to talk to you about this, because a lot of the people that I talk to saw this episode originally when it was broadcast back in the 90s.
Okay.
And the way that it was broadcast, especially here in the United States, is that first episode was in June, and then we had to wait until September to get the second episode. and no one knew what was going to happen. Right? Yeah. Whereas in today's world, you had there was no stopping.
Yeah, there was no
It
gap.
Was one thing. Yeah. It was no stop.
It was one episode for me.
So I'm curious as to how you feel about these episodes being, not having that wait, and you may just have realized this for the first time. So if you could reflect on that for just a moment, how was it for you as just seeing it as sort of a movie and less as like two separate episodes?
Yeah, for me, it was just like one long episode, right? And so I actually, when you say that, then only I realized that there was a gap, because there was no gap for me. Because in Netflix, it was just next episode in 5 seconds, and it just goes. All right. So, okay. Yeah. I never realized that.
Yeah, no, it was a big thing for a lot of fans, because we really didn't know what was going to happen.
One of the reasons why I like this episode is because the enemy this time is the Borg, and the Borg is supposed to be an adversary that you have no idea how to defeat. So that's why it was like, oh my god, this is scary. It's really one of the scary moments where you really have no idea how they're going to come through it. Yeah, so that's why I think I really enjoy this particular episode, and I really have no idea. I mean, it's like sometimes when you're watching an episode and you go like, oh, do this, do that, right? But this one, it's like, oh my god, I don't know. They took away Captain Picard. What are we gonna do?
Well, one of the things I think about whenever Best of Both Worlds comes up is I always have a particular affection for the character of Commander Shelby. But I'm curious as to what you thought about her.
Well, to be honest, I thought she's annoying.
Oh, you didn't like her? Okay, tell me why.
Yeah, because she's okay. I guess you would say she's ambitious, right? And I guess for Asians, we don't really like. Well, how to say? You can be ambitious, but you don't really show to people how ambitious you are. So sometimes, to me, she came across as being rude to Riker when she was, like, oh, she go ahead and did this and did that. So to I guess for Asians, we will find this behavior really rude because you don't respect the seniors in your workplace. So yeah, maybe that's why I kind of find her to be really annoying. Yeah, but
that's fair.
Yeah, but I understand that for other parts of the world, this is probably accepted acceptable behavior. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, one of the things about Shelby is that, it's just part of the diversity of the world that you can have all these different characters and people can have different reactions to them around the world. And I think that that's part of the wonder of the show and living in a globalized environment where people have their own reactions to things.
Yeah. So that's why I think that's one of the reasons why I think Star Trek is so fantastic. It's because of that. It can appeal globally, really.
So it seems to me that you really seem to like the Mirror Universe, because another episode that we have on the list is original series Mirror Mirror TOS Season 2, Episode 4. Yeah. We have Bearded Spock. We've got Lieutenant Moreau. We've got the Tantalus Field. We've got the Hawkins living on their planet down there with they're being shaken down for their dilithium by the evil empire. So what is it about this episode that really attracted you? Why did it make the cut?
Okay, because when I first watched it, this is the first episode of Star Trek that have the alternate universe.
Yes.
Because I haven't watched Discovery yet at that time. For the Next Generation, there's one episode, what was it? Yesterday's Enterprise.
Yeah, but, and even that wasn't the Mirror Universe. That was just like an alternate.
Yeah, so I haven't watched that episode yet. So this is the first time that I encounter alternate universe. So it's like, oh, this is a nice setting, a nice diversion of a plot, where you could possibly have a parallel universe and it could somehow get together, crossover. Yeah, so I think that was really fun, and it was, I guess it was kind of cheesy as well to see things that they do, the hand gesture and all that.
Yeah, the salutes and all that stuff.
Yeah, the salute and all that, and how barbaric they were. So, and I love it how the real Spock, well, the how do you say, the current universe Spock?
Prime. The term we use is Prime Spock.
Okay,
so like our Mr. Spock is Prime Spock, and then there's MU Spock or Mirror Universe Spock with the beard.
Okay, so the Prime Spock immediately recognized, okay, you guys are not from this universe. I like that, yeah. And it was, I don't know, it was so horrible. I mean, the Mirror Universe was like so chaotic, and even the character that you like Sulu and Chekhov, they're supposed to be evil, but in a way they become comical as well. Yeah, because I don't know. I guess by that episode, you don't see them as being evil ever. So when in that episode you see them being evil, it's like it doesn't compute. So it was like a fun episode for me. Yeah.
Oh, wonderful, glorious. So then let's talk about a more serious episode. Let's talk about TOS, City on the Edge of Forever, Season 1, Episode 28. Many times, just so you know, often held up as one of the best episodes of all Star Trek.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah. So, and, there's people who would debate that, but it's often talked about, certainly as a top 10 of all Star Trek, for sure. So tell me, what about this particular episode appealed to you? We have the beautiful time travel. We have Elizabeth Keeler. What's going on here for you, Salwa, with this episode?
I guess maybe because they were traveling back to the 20s, you have a feeling of nostalgia. So that's why you kind of have a warm feeling when you're watching this episode. And they had to work with their hands. There's no technology. There's nothing automatic back in the 20s. So they really have to, do the manual labor, and it's kind of fun. And I think, when you see Captain Kirk falling in love, because you don't see a lot of episodes when he does that. So it's kind of sweet and warm feeling. You have that kind of feeling when you watched it. And I think the nostalgia of, like seeing things in black and white. Yeah. So, and the lady is supposed to be Joan Collins.
Yeah, that's the actress Joan Collins. Who's a very big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't know it back then when I first watched it for the first time. So it was later when I found out that was Joan Collins. So I was like, oh, that was Joan Collins. Wow, she's so pretty.
Yeah, I got to meet her actually.
Wow, really? Okay.
Yeah, she actually came to the Star Trek convention a couple of years ago that's here in Las Vegas where I am.
Oh, you're so lucky.
And yeah, she actually showed up and had an appearance, and you could have I think she did photo ops and autographs. I could be wrong about that because I don't normally do those things, but she was there. She had a table at the vendor's room. You could go up and talk to her and stuff. I mean, it was a whole thing. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the first time that ever happened.
Oh.
One of the things I want to recommend though to you, and this is not for now, but this is like after you get through watching all of Star Trek. Uh-huh. The author of the episode was Harlan Ellison, who passed away not too long ago. And one of the things that had happened in the writing of the episode was the episode that he turned in, the script, was wildly different than what actually ended up on screen.
Okay.
And he was so mad about that he wanted to get his name taken off of it. Because it was so different. He's like, well, the episode that you made is not what I wrote. Uh-huh. Like, don't put my name on it. It was one of those kinds of situations, which there's a whole procedure in Hollywood for figuring out that kind of stuff. And the thing was, Gene really wanted his name on it because Harlan had some stature. So he wanted to say they had an episode by Harlan. Uh-huh. And, it was a whole political thing. Okay. But the episode that Harlan wrote is a fantastic piece of science fiction all on its own. It has a lot of stuff in it that's not really consistent with a lot of Star Trek. And was kind of Gene's problem with it. His vision of what Star Trek was at the time, like a lot of stuff just didn't
align.
Fit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he had to make a lot of changes, and that's what made Harlan mad, and I'm not trying to explain this without taking sides, right? Because I really don't have a side to take. I'm just trying to explain what happened. But the original treatment and screenplay that Harlan wrote is just a glorious, glorious piece of sci-fi just on its own, and is definitely worth checking out.
Okay.
So, which people can get if they search around for it online. I would encourage anyone to go check that out.
So it's like
and read
like a script that you can read.
Yeah, there's actually his estate actually published an audiobook version of it that you can download. Yeah, but it's very different.
Okay, but
there's. Yeah, go ahead.
But you still have the same characters. You still have Kirk and Spock, right?
Right. Well, yeah, but see, the thing to realize, Salwa, is that when in the first season of any TV show, a lot of the writers are writing episodes before any of it is really filmed and before they even know like what the show is.
Okay.
And so when Harlan was writing the episode, all he had was probably what's called a writer's Bible that Gene gave him. He'd probably, had only seen, if any episodes had come out, he'd only seen a little bit of it.
Okay.
And so like when we think of Mr. Spock, even someone who's new to the series like you know who Mr. Spock is and what he's all about, right? If you just read what Gene had written in the Bible, you might have gotten a very different interpretation.
Okay.
And so the whole story is kind of not, you can see that it would have been very different.
Okay. All
right. So for instance, like, without giving too much away, one of the ways that the story begins in the episode, the whole idea is McCoy gets injected with cordrazine, right? He gets accidentally injected with this drug that he wasn't supposed to get injected with, right? In the short story, there's actually a guy on the ship, not McCoy, who's dealing drugs.
Okay.
Like illegal drugs.
Okay.
Called the Jewels of Sound.
Okay.
And that's what they're called, the Jewels of Sound. And like this guy basically like ODs on it, and that's what caused you can see like the whole setup of the show is completely different and the way that it begins.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a very, very different thing. But just as a piece of science fiction on its own, definitely worth reading, definitely worth checking out. And I'll put a link up to that if I can find it in the show notes for the episode. So I would encourage anyone to go check that out. I sincerely do. Okay, let's move on and talk about another TOS episode, but one that has never been talked about on my show before. And I'm very excited that you brought it up, Salwa. Yeah, very excited. And that is, yes, our season 2 finale in TOS, Assignment Earth. As I said, season 2, episode 26. We have the wonderful Gary 7. We've got the Beta 5 computer. We've got Terry Garr in the episode, who was rather displeased with the whole state of affairs apparently. What is it about this episode that made you want to discuss it today?
I think it's because this time they went back to the 60s, and actually they are in the 60s. So basically they're just portraying their normal time at that time. So I find that interesting. And then they have a rocket launching as well. So I've always wondered, how do they do that? Is it because they took it from some stock film or something?
Most assuredly.
Yeah. So yeah, and I guess the most interesting part is Gary 7, because he only appeared in that one episode, and you have no idea who he is, and it was never resolved. Like who he is from, where he's from, who he really is, what is his like real identity, who's he's working for. How come he has access to such high technology, advanced technology back in the 60s, which is supposed to be, I guess, like the same technology in the, what year is Captain Kirk? 2000 something? Yeah.
Yeah, it's in the 23rd century.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's been people trying to put exact dates on it, and I can't remember if there's anything official, but it's the 23rd century.
Yeah. So yeah, it's like watching a spy movie in a way. Yeah, and you have a cat that turns into a woman, and then cat. Yeah, so I feel like this is like an episode that can have a spin-off or something like that. Yeah, it's really interesting, but it's the only one episode.
It's amazing.
So.
It's amazing that you say that. Because the episode was actually intended to be a pilot for a Gary 7 series.
Oh, really? Okay.
Really?
But is there a Gary 7 series?
Gene Roddenberry, the writer and creator of the original Star Trek, was concerned that a show was going to be canceled. Star Trek. So he kind of put in this like backdoor pilot with Gary 7.
Okay.
So he could say like, hey, I got a whole thing set up. Like, we can just take that show and make that.
Okay. But he got one more season.
He did, although he was actually not that involved in season 3.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, the original series. His name was still on it, but he wasn't exactly as involved as he was in the earlier ones. So season 1 and season 2 definitely had a lot of Gene. Also, Next Generation, the early seasons had a lot of Gene. Season 3 of TOS less so. Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. They pushed him out and they put some other guys in charge, and it is what it is.
Yeah, so I find this particular episode to be like very intriguing in terms of that, probably because of who is Gary 7, what is his agency, who is he representing. They never actually answered those questions. Where did that Beta 5 comes from? And the cat must be a special kind of alien, right? We don't know.
I guess so. We don't know.
Yeah. So that's why it's one of those episodes that you remembered because there's so many unanswered questions, I guess.
Absolutely. And they never resolve any of it. They never resolve any of it, which I will say, there's a lot of episodes of Trek that you haven't seen yet. And in some of those, not a lot, but in some of those, they try to go back and answer some earlier things. Like whatever happened to so-and-so and, like what was the cage? Yeah, we have the menagerie that kind of, sort of answers some of the other stuff, like, whatever happened to the cage. And then, again, without giving a lot away, but there's more of Captain Pike in Discovery, which you've seen some of that. Yeah. So, yeah, they try to go back every now and then and cover some of the potholes that they left in the earlier series. Yeah. So look forward to that. That's coming your way.
But not Gary 7.
Not Gary 7. Okay. We don't get any, and I'm pretty sure about that. We don't get any other information about him. Now, there might have been some books that people wrote because there's a lot of Star Trek novels out there. Okay. So, in fact, like hundreds upon hundreds upon hundreds of Star Trek novels have been written. Okay. But there might have been some of those that touched on him, but I wouldn't know. I haven't read even a tenth of those. Okay. Right. So I couldn't even tell you. Oh. But if anybody out there knows, please hit me up, and then I'll pass that information along.
I'm surprised that nobody mentioned Assignment Earth, because I thought this is like really interesting.
But you know what? That's the wonderful thing about doing this show, Salwa, truly, is that I never know what episodes people are going to pick. Mm-hmm. And I never know what people are going to want to really get into and why they love it. Yeah. And I'm always excited to find out why. Yeah. And I think it's great. I mean, one of the things I will say is that Assignment Earth had a lot of great Star Trek in it, in that it was sort of about, the insanity of the Cold War and some of the things that were happening. Because, remember, they were dealing with it as it was happening. Yeah, I mean, the Cold War was a real thing.
Back in the 60s, yeah.
Yeah, it was a real thing. I mean, I wasn't alive in the 60s, but I remember the Cold War. I was a teenager in the 80s and the 90s, and I remember all of that. So it was definitely something to think about. But let's move on and do some TNG. Let's talk about TNG, The Child, Season 2, Episode 1. This is the one where, first of all, we have a lot of changes because all of a sudden Geordi is now the engineer. Beverly Crusher is off the ship. Will Wheaton as Wesley Crusher is by himself. We have Dr. Pulaski on board, and all of a sudden Troy is pregnant. So that's really, really changing things up there in Season 2 of TNG. What about this episode was special to you, Salwa?
Because it relates closely to me, because I myself just gave birth, right? So in this episode, Troy, well, not accidentally, but somehow she got pregnant without her even, asking for it. And then she accepted it, and then she had a child, and even everybody was kind of supportive. Okay, you have a child, and they were supportive of that. And somehow the child was growing up very, very quickly, and to the point when she lost the child. So I think it probably is meaningful to me because of that, because of the process of becoming a mother for her. Yeah.
I can only imagine, because you're watching the episode as you're nursing your baby, right? Exactly. I can only imagine what that was like.
Yeah. So that's why I guess, like, the child and the offspring. The offspring is another episode in which Data had a child. So that is also, I guess, that's why both episodes were kind of meaningful to me, because it's about having a child.
Yeah, I've talked about this on my show before, but I will say that I enjoyed The Offspring as an episode of Star Trek when it first aired, and I've always watched it and enjoyed it and thought it was a great episode. When I became a parent, I had a very different sort of whole nother level of reactions to it, right? I can't... The part of it that I find most affecting is at the end, of course, when Lal looks at Data and just says, "Thank you for my life."
I think I cried.
It really wrecks me, every time, and Star Trek does not do that to me very often. I will say I'm not a person who gets very emotional about this stuff. I'm rather Vulcan myself in how I look at these things.
Okay.
And like there's an episode in Deep Space Nine which you have not seen yet, which I won't spoil for you. But a lot of people say, "Oh my God, I can't watch it without crying." And I watch it and I was like, Okay. I don't always have these reactions that other people do.
Okay.
And that might probably says a lot about me, I guess. I don't know. You'll have to make up your own mind. Yeah, I know. But The Offspring certainly does it for me, and. It's really just, it's the kind of episode that I would show that to anyone who says, like, Star Trek isn't about anything, or it's just stupid spaceships or something like that. That's the kind of episode I would show them and say, no, here was an episode about a bunch of robots, and it's more about humanity than almost anything else, right? It's really teaching a lesson about what it means to be a parent and what it means to be a human, and the love that we can have for each other. I mean, it's glorious.
Yeah, so that's why those are like really, really meaningful to me. I guess because I'm in this point of time. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that's also really one of the things that I've come across in doing this show is that certain episodes touch people because of places where they are in their lives. And like, I just recorded another interview with another guest that hasn't come out yet, so no one knows what this is about. But they picked an episode that no one would ever pick for any reason.
Okay.
And they're like, that was a very special episode. And I'm looking at the email going, huh?
Okay.
Really? You sure about that? Is that a typo? Like, did you copy and paste the wrong name? Not that it's a bad episode, but it's not like the kind of episode where you would say, yeah, that really affected me and changed my life, But for this person, it surely did. And it's because they were at a certain time in their life and something clicked when they watched it that gave them a change in their perspective, and it had an effect. And there's no way to predict that stuff. There's no way to predict when these things will happen. Yeah. So you never know what episode is going to do it for people. And that's one of the things I've learned about this show, is about doing Trek Profiles, is every episode can be meaningful to somebody. Even if it's just teaching them how not to be, or something they don't like, or they have some learning about themselves because they saw something in the episode that gave them a lesson on something. So you never know how it's going to go.
And when you see how Data was trying really hard to fix Lal, and then you go, oh my God, that is even more sad, because he was really trying to fix her and he couldn't. So it's really heartbreaking.
There's no spoilers here, but I'm going to give you a theory. And as you're watching TNG, I'm going to encourage you to think about this theory, especially regarding Data.
Okay.
All right. And I there's no proof. There's no right answer to this.
Okay.
But I lean towards the opinion that Data had what you and I would call emotions all along. Uh-huh. He just didn't know that that's what they were.
But he's not supposed to have the chip, right? That gives him...
Right. The chip is a later thing, but I think that made it more... I think it just turned up the dial.
Uh-huh. Okay.
I think he really had... Emotions, but he just didn't know what they were, and he didn't express them the way that you and I might.
But he feels them.
But I think he feels them. I think he really does. And he just didn't know that that's what it was. So just like sometimes, you may have like a medical problem. You may have an itch, and you think, oh, I just have an itch. But then you go to the doctor and they're like, that's not an itch. That's like, I got to operate, or like I got to, right? But you don't know
you
that,
didn't realize
right?
It, yeah.
You don't realize it. I think it's like that. I think he had some kind of what we would call emotions, but it just wasn't something that he knew that's what it was. I don't know, but you can make up your own mind. Like I said, there's no right answer to this. This is all just a fan opinion, so I'm not spoiling anything.
There was one episode when okay, I don't remember the name of the episode, but there was an episode where some guy was coming over to Enterprise and he wanted to take Data back and take him apart.
Yeah, Measure of a Man.
Yeah, and the Captain Picard was trying to debate on how Data is like a sentient being. And
yes.
And that actually makes me think, like, yeah, really, what makes a person a person? So yeah, that's one of the wonderful thing about Star Trek. It makes you think about these kind of questions that usually don't think about. Like, who knows? I mean, later on, now we already have robots, but at which point when we will reach, like a robot is a sentient being that you can't just take that robot away, So, yeah. I don't know.
No, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true. I think it's one of the great things about Star Trek is that it causes you to ask yourself these questions, right? And to figure these things out.
You never think about that before.
So let's talk about some more episodes. We've got just a couple more on the list. Let's talk about TOS Season 3, Episode 10, For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, a wonderful Dr. McCoy episode where we have the ship/planet Yonada that the people think is actually a planet, but it's actually a spaceship. And we have Natira, the High Priestess, and there's sort of a hint of a little romance there with her and McCoy. And Dr. McCoy, of course, the episode starts with Dr. McCoy getting a life-threatening diagnosis that he has to come to terms with. And so really, I think just a great episode. And an example I often bring up when people say Season 3 episodes in TOS aren't that great. This is one of the ones I think about is pretty good. But I'm curious, for you, what makes it pretty good or awesome? What's special about this episode?
Well, I guess because, my favorite character is Dr. McCoy. And in this episode, he got married. So I think somehow, compared to the Next Generation, for example, there's not really a lot of character development. in the original series.
Mm-hmm.
So it's only once in a while that you see something else about these characters. So it's this episode where Dr. McCoy would actually have some sort of character development. And in this case, he found a woman that he fell in love with and he got married. And he was diagnosed with a terminal illness. Yeah. The weird thing is that it was never mentioned again in all the other episodes. I mean, he was sick now.
There's a lot of that in Star Trek. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And there's more to come of that, too. Wait till you get a hold of Voyager. The whole show is like that.
Oh, okay. All right. So, it was kind of weird, I guess, because it was never mentioned again. But, yeah, it was interesting in that case because
Well, he gets cured.
Yeah, he got cured at the end of the episode, right? Yeah,
right.
So, and it was like he promised that one day he will come back and see Natura again. So there's the promise of happily ever after for Dr. McCoy. So I guess I like that.
It is a great promise. I'm going to tell you that you got to watch the Star Trek films to find out what happens to Dr. McCoy.
Okay.
So,
all right.
I'm not going to spoil anything. Okay. I'll just say because the movies are about. There's a whole series of movies about those TOS characters in the future. So you get to see where they kind of end up.
Okay. All right.
So just watch that. But yeah, I really love that TOS episode. It's definitely in my I would say definitely in my top 20 of TOS for sure, because I think it has a wonderful lesson around, again, what it means to be human, what it is to love, how to face our own mortality. I mean, it's got all these great questions in it. That's what I love about Star Trek. So I was really glad that you picked it.
Well, if you want to go really deep on it, it's like, how in the real world you can have people who will just blindly believe in everything that they've been told.
Mm-hmm.
And and that episode shows how possible it is to happen. It can really happen. Yeah. When in the real world, when people just follow, this is what you should believe, and yes, that's true. Okay. But it's sad, but it's really happening in the real world.
Absolutely true. Absolutely true. All right, let's talk about one more. Let's do Star Trek Discovery Season 2, Episode 11, Perpetual Infinity. So here's the one where we flash back to the Burnham family living on Doctori Alpha. We've got Control, Leland as a human. We've got all kinds of crazy stuff. So much stuff happens in this episode. I really didn't even know how to summarize it in a couple of sentences, but basically a bunch of crazy stuff happens. And we got a lot of Burnham and a lot of the Burnham family and Red Angel and Control and Insanity. So what about this episode appealed to you, Salwa?
I guess for this one is because it's the first time you actually see Michael with her real family.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you start seeing, oh, so that's how it's like, how she was growing up with her mom and her dad, and how they got separated, and how she believed that both her parents are dead. And so that kind of answers the question that you've been wondering throughout the entire series before coming to that episode.
Mm-hmm.
And when you actually saw how her relationship is with her mom, and it makes you realize, oh, how much she must have missed her mom so much. So I think that's why that is like a special episode to me, because that was the only time when they actually address how she was like growing up. And that particular point where she got separated from her parents.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So, Salwa, I've enjoyed our conversation. We've been talking for a while, and it just amazes me that we're able to do this. I mean, I'm in Las Vegas on the west coast of the United States. You're in Kuala Lumpur. It's after dinner for me. It's just after breakfast time for you,
it's
I would imagine.
So you're for me.
Yeah, it's the next day where you are. So you're actually in the future. It's morning for you. It's night for me, and you're ahead. I'm behind the times, which is pretty normal in my life. So from the future, Salwa, speaking to us from the future, I want to ask you, what about Star Trek is important to you? What about this show is so interesting that makes you now a fan? You admitted to being a fan. Why are you a Star Trek fan?
Okay, I think it's rare to see a TV show that has such depth in it. I mean, the more I watch it, the more I realize how complicated the universe can be, the Star Trek universe can be. I mean, when I watch Discovery, I realize, for example, for the Klingons, how they have their own language, how they have their own culture, how they have their own history and all that, and how the history of the Klingons and Andorians and Ferengis, they're all tied to the humans. And it makes me realize, wow, this is just really complex, rich kind of universe that I really enjoyed this kind of stories. It reminds me of like Lord of the Rings, where it's really really complex and rich. And I guess what I like is because for the Star Trek, you have all sorts of characters.
Mm-hmm.
Even from the original series, you can see Asians, you can see African Americans in the show. And yeah, as the show progresses, you can see the diversity.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that for females, for example, they're just not like a bimbo or anything like that. They take control, and
Mm-hmm.
people respect them and all that. So it's I love it. And because for every episodes, there's always something new that you can learn from the episode. So it's not just watching a TV show and enjoying it. And because for us, we will never experience space travel, so it's like a guilty pleasure to watch these episodes. But also, how you can see how people interact. And there's a lot of real life lessons that you can pick up from all of these episodes. There was an episode where they were talking about two factions fighting against each other, and in the end nobody wins. And that really relates to the real world.
Mm-hmm.
And like we discussed before about having a child and losing the child, about people taking up leadership in distress, in stressful situations. Yeah, it's that's why I think it's so different from all the other TV shows, which is why I really love it. The diversity, the storyline, the complexity of the universe, the the possibility. It's so easy to relate it to the real world. How technology can overcome you and all that. So yeah, I think that's why it's really interesting.
Well, Salwa, I've enjoyed talking to you, but I have to tell you that the M5, my co-host, is now signaling me that it is time for the Kobayashi Maru. The Kobayashi Maru is a challenging and difficult test, cunningly prepared by the M5. Should you not only survive the test, but pass it as well, the M5 will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our little podcast over here. Are you ready, Salwa?
Yes, I am.
M5, load the Kobayashi Maru simulation and prepare to record Salwa's responses.
Working.
Question 1. If you were on the bridge of the Enterprise 1701D, would I find you at Ops or at Con?
Con.
Who would you rather meet, Lal or Ian?
Lol.
Which would you find more useful, the Tantalus Field or an Agonizer booth?
Tantalus Field.
Would you rather visit Yonada or Gary Seven's home planet?
Gary Seven.
Which would be the worst place to be stuck for all eternity, the Mirror Universe or the Mycelial Network?
Mycelial Network.
Simulation complete. M5, please compute the results and tell us if our guest has passed the Kobayashi Maru.
Analyzing.
Salwa, I am pleased to tell you that the M5 has calculated that you have passed the Kobayashi Maru simulation. Congratulations, my friend.
Woohoo!
And now, the M5, who has analyzed your answers, will award you an honorary Star Trek title on behalf of our podcast. M5, what title shall we award our guest?
Salwa Mohammed Noor is awarded the title of Mirror Universe Historian for the Memory Alpha Library Complex.
So there you go.
Hey, that's really great. I would really love to work in the library. Yeah.
See, the M5 knew that and calculated took your preferences into account.
That's perfect.
That's perfect. So I know that you're not on any of the social medias. I know that you're not on the Twitter or on the Facebook or Reddit or any of those places with an account. So people can't get in touch with you. But I do want to put a challenge out there for you, Salwa, which is when you finish watching all the Star Trek, will you send me an email letting me know if you want to make changes to your best episodes list? And maybe I'll put that out for my followers because I'll be curious if any of these change. If none of them change, that's great. But if you make any changes, will you let me know?
Okay.
And when you're finished, and I would just love to see.
Sure. No problem.
Fantastic. Well, Salwa, thank you so much for being part of Trek Profiles.
Thank you, John, for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
Here ends this installment of the Trek Profiles podcast. And before we offer a Trek quote to close this episode, I'd like to remind you that you may send us your encyclicals of express endorsement, your hellacious harangues of harassment, or selfie videos of yourself in a make-believe rap battle with Gary Seven to feedback@trekprofiles.com or on Facebook or Twitter @TrekProfiles. Anything you send us may be used in the show, or it may be sent directly to the planet Minos, the arsenal of freedom. This week, I leave you with a quote from For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky, where Natira says, quote, "Is truth not truth for all?" Close quote. Thanks for listening, and live long and prosper.
This handcrafted podcast is brought to you by Stars and Sky Media Lab. It's cosmic.
Or not, just a moment or two.
Okay.
But very soon we have to go into question one, which is always the same question, which is, are you a Star Trek fan? And you have to say yes.
What would I be doing here if I'm not? Okay, yeah.
That's right. If you cannot say yes, we will not proceed any further, right? So you have to say yes.
Okay.
I could tell that you were a fan of very complex worlds.
Yeah.
Because, and we didn't even talk about this, but when I saw your post on that message form, and I won't say where it was or what your name was, but I knew that name was a very deep cut from Game of Thrones.
Yes.
And not from the show. Like people who watch the show, even huge fans of the show that had memorized everything that was in the TV show, wouldn't know that name. Right? You had to have read the books.
That's right.
You had to have read the books, and that character isn't even in the books. As a character, right?
Yeah.
It's someone who's only mentioned in history in the books.
Yes.
So I was like, that is a super, super deep cut into Game of Thrones. So when I saw that's the handle that you were going by, I was like, oh, this person, we're going to be simpatico. I was like, because I know exactly who that is and why they're awesome.
Yeah.
You know.
I actually have merchandise of Game of Thrones.
Oh, you do?
But I don't have yet for Star Trek, so maybe that's coming.
Oh, you got to go get some pins, my friend. Yeah. You'll do great. You'll do great. Yeah, they'll look wonderful on you. It's a great thing. So I would encourage you to do that. And I don't know if there's any Star Trek conventions or sci-fi conventions out in Malaysia, but if you ever get the chance, you should go. Yeah,
I think I would really, really enjoy it. I would probably not dress up as any of the characters, but I would just, go and take pictures and get signatures.
There's a young lady on Twitter who is also a Muslim who wears what you wear, who did a whole Star Trek outfit, a TNG uniform.
Really?
Yes, 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 with the hair thing and the whole outfit, and it was beautiful.
The
if I can find it.
Or what?
No, a Federation officer.
Oh, okay, interesting.
You know, with the Delta badge. Yeah. I'll send you a picture if I can find it.
Okay.
Very good choices, I have to say.
Okay, so I won't know what I got until you publish the episode.
Well, there's no wrong or right answers.
Yeah.
It's all made up.
Yeah, I know, but
there's no.
You're gonna give me a badge or something, right? I'm gonna be.
Yeah, I'm gonna give you a thing. Okay. Yeah, everybody passes. Okay. Don't worry, right. Everybody passes. Okay. So you passed, and I'm gonna tell you right now. Okay. So. Yeah. But I do. I know you're not on any of the social media, but on Twitter. Huh? Where I do have a lot of Twitter followers. I do, after each episode comes out, I tweet these questions.
Okay.
And people can vote. You know, my followers can have their opinion, you know, and say what they think. Yeah. So but you don't have to worry about that because you're not on the Twitter, so don't worry about it.
In fact, if you don't mind, we can chat again. You know, like do another episode, like 1 year after or something.
Oh, we can check in on your status. Maybe I could put something like that out as a bonus.
Yeah, something like that.
You know, yeah. You know, I think we could probably do something like that. It's not normally what I do because the idea is that, like, you know, this is your little time capsule, right, for your Star Trek fandom. But as someone who's sort of experiencing Star Trek for the first time, that's something we should actually do. So maybe I can put that out as like a bonus or like a special extended episode or something, tack it on to one of the other episodes, and we can see if you've made any changes in your episode list. I think that'd be a glorious thing to do.
It would be interesting.
All right.
Yeah, because I'm expecting that it will take me quite some time to finish.
I'll be here, my friend. It's all good.
Okay.
So you have my email. You have the ways to contact me. You know how to get in touch with me. So go ahead and do that, and we're good. So once again, thank you so much. So was that okay for you? Was that all right?
Yeah. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing this. I've been doing Trek Profiles for 2.5 years. I just released episode 40 last night. The night before last.
Okay, all right.
So I do about one episode a month.
Okay. So when did you start becoming a fan?
I've been a fan my whole life. I don't remember a time where I was not a Star Trek fan.
Wow. Okay.
Sometimes when it comes to fandom, and I know, for instance, you're a big Harry Potter fan, and you're a big Game of Thrones fan. You know that there are people out there who like certain characters or certain things, and they hate other things in the books or the movies, and like they desperately, like, they don't even want to talk to people who disagree with them. You know, like, you like that character? What's wrong with you? You know, I don't feel that way.
That's obsessive.
I've never felt that way, you know, and so people can come on here and they can be like, oh, I hate, you know, episode whatever, and I'm like, that's my favorite episode, and I don't care. You know, it's fine.
It's all good.
I don't even worry about it. Yeah, it's all good, right? As the kids say, it's all good. So I that's when I said this is the show that I can do.
Okay.
But if you're interested, you can go to my website and go to the How to Listen page. And it like towards the bottom, it says, here's all of our episodes. There's 3 episodes I put out in March called Podcast Extravaganza, part 1, 2, and 3. And that's actually where I am the guest on this show.
Oh, okay.
So what I did is I invited...
How to Listen? Okay.
Yeah, click on How to Listen.
And then? Where do I go now?
Let me look it up here, because I'm not... Yeah, I don't have it in front of me. So you're on the How to Listen page, and if you scroll down, it's the... Yeah, second one from the bottom. You can browse and listen to all our episodes online by going here.
Okay, all right.
If you click that, it takes you to a page that has every episode I've ever done.
Okay, so yeah, Trek Profiles number 40. Right.
Yeah, you can listen. You can scroll down, and it takes you all the way down to episode 1.
Okay.
So if you look at episodes, let's see, 30, 32, 33, and 34, that was my 2-year anniversary.
Okay.
So what I did was I invited people.
Okay.
Yeah, I invited people like you who had been guests on the show to interview me about something that I thought was one of my favorite episodes of Star Trek.
Oh, okay. All right.
So if you have an interest in learning about what I think about Star Trek,
Okay.
that's the place to go.
Okay.
But I'm going to warn you, they're long episodes.
Okay.
Really long.
Okay.
Because what happens, like tonight, we covered some of these episodes we just talked about for 5 minutes. Right? But if I gave you one episode and said, we're going to talk about this episode on a podcast, it would have been like 30 minutes.
Oh, okay. All right.
You know, yeah, it's how the conversation goes, you know? And so like the conversation just expanded. You know, I didn't have more episodes on my list than we did today, just now. But because there was a different host for every single one, you know, the time just expanded. So yeah, so if you're interested in my Star Trek story, that's the place to go.
Okay. All right. I'm going to listen to that.
All right, yeah, listen to it. You can listen to everything online.
Yeah.
You know, it's all right there if you want. So yeah, I'm going to warn you. There's a lot.
Wow, 40. Yeah, I have a lot to go through.
Yeah, if you want. But the great thing about my show in particular is that you don't have to listen to it. It's not in sequence.
Ah, okay. Yeah.
Right, because every episode is just an interview with somebody. But the thing I would caution you about, though, is that we could be talking about episodes you haven't seen.
Oh, yeah. All right. So there will be spoiler.
Yes, there will be spoilers.
Okay.
So maybe if you really want to listen, you can, but you may not want to, only because there's spoilers, right? So just so you know, and then you'll see it on that page there,
Okay.
and you'll be able to listen online and hear how it came out.
Oh my God. I'm really.
What, are you nervous or something?
Because I've never been
Why?
interviewed before, and this is Star Trek, so I don't know.
It's fine. It's just a TV show.
Yeah.
All right. There's no downside. It's all good.
Yeah.
It's we do a respectful interview. It's fun. It's polite. It's a good time. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, I would play these for my mother. You know.
Yeah.
So no, and I thought you did great.
Thank you.